Hi there, my name is John Kennedy. I've been invited to speak here on the topic of hybrid operations, service ownership, and a centralized command center. Okay, right, let's get started. So what I wanted to do to start this off really was just to give you an idea of what I'm going to be talking about and the story that I'm going to be going through, starting with introductions. Okay, I'll go into that in a second. I will take you back to 2018 and the challenges that we were facing at the time, which are very focused on the topic of this presentation. There is a feature of a culture clash between DevOps and the traditional ITIL command center incident management. We have what came out of that, which was a dual workflow solution, and how that worked out technically, and then how our major incident management team have adopted that along with our model for tracking service impacts, and how that layers on top of this solution, and where we are now and what our next steps are. Okay, so introduction. John Francis Kennedy, hello. Who am I? I am Irish. I've been living in London for 20 years. Bonus points in chat if anyone can figure out where in Ireland I'm from. I'm guessing you won't. Irish people can't figure that one out either. Why am I a good person to talk on this topic? I would say, I've been living this, okay? I've got 20 years experience specializing in all aspects of monitoring, observability, and event management lifecycles. So that's everything that comes in and ends up feeding the incident management side of things. I have been fortunate enough in that I've spent all of that career in large enterprises in this area. So there's basically nothing I would say in that technology domain and its associated satellites that I haven't either been technically responsible for or been working out problems on for my career. And as I mentioned, we've been right in the middle of this topic for the last few years. So I've got a lot to talk about. I'm going to go quite quickly, but it's a video, so hopefully you'll be able to watch it a second time if you want to. What do I do when I'm not at work? If you're eagle-eyed behind me on the shelves, you may see that there are lots of board games. That's my hobby when I'm not chasing or being chased by my 5-year-old twin daughters. Right. Company I work for IHS Markit. I'm going to go through this very quickly. And it's important as well from a point of view of scale and when we start talking about services and service management. IHS Markit at its core is an information company with expertise across the world's major industries. We leverage data science and technology to provide the insight, data, and solutions that our customers need. So when they come to us looking for insight on how to make informed decisions for growth or for efficiency or for performance, they come to us. We are across so many of different major industries. Our largest footprint is across financial services, transportation, and energy. There's a slide here that gives you an idea of the scale in our customer base. We've got 16,000 employees, so it's a reasonable size enterprise, and our customers are obviously very demanding, as you can see by the list there, and they go from finance to corporate to 20 of the G20 governments. Now, this slide is where I want to start talking about services. So because we have product offerings in so many different areas of the company, we are so many different areas of the of industries. We have products and each product is associated with a service. We have somewhere in the region of 700 services, which are customer facing. And then we have 200 to 300 internal services as well. So all of these have to be tracked. This is what incidents, regardless of where they come from, are associated to. And tracking that at scale is a challenge at the best of times. Never mind when you realize that we have grown through acquisition, and there is a very different customer persona depending on different clients that we have internally. We might have one aspect of financial services that are all agile, DevOps, kind of fintech orientated. The last thing they ever want to do is raise a ticket or do something with ServiceNow. They want to do everything themselves, and that's great. Okay, we might have another part of the organization where they're much more happy when somebody else is managing their systems and managing their databases. So they're on a managed service model, and they'll sit comfortably within the ITIL framework. Now, figuring all of that out is really the challenge, and it's the challenge that that really this presentation is based around. So, if you cast your mind back to 2018, seems like a long time ago, and things that were going on in 2018 was there was the Thai cave rescue. If you remember, all those school children got caught in that cave, and the water came up, and Elon Musk wanted to send miniature submarines to save them, and it was all over the news. There was a football World Cup. Harry and Meghan were married. And John, that's me, was working out how to solve a rapidly escalating DevOps versus ITIL culture clash in incident management. This was smack bang in the middle of our cloud transformation and the growing rise of DevOps being mentioned everywhere and being adopted in its various different coats and shapes. And we had very conflicting requirements. At the time, things we wanted to do, we wanted to bring in a incident notification and escalation tooling, okay? We had pockets of this around the company. PagerDuty was one offering. We had competitors as well in the company. We wanted to bring it together into one enterprise offering that was horizontal across the company and properly managed. The DevOps folks had it first. They wanted it to call people out. They wanted it because they wanted to be agile, autonomous, and awesome. They wanted to have full control over all their monitoring feeds, and it did all of this for them, and they were very happy. They did not want tickets or ServiceNow. Not a fan. And it was number one in their requirements when they heard that I was getting involved was, no, we don't want that. Their management and their stakeholders, on the other hand, wanted global oversight. And some of them were looking at oversight across teams which were agile and teams which were in more traditional ITIL side of the firm. And compliance, we have lots of products which are under various regulatory regimes. They wanted tracking controls and a common system of record, ServiceNow. So we have conflicting statements here. They do not want ServiceNow, and then management and corporate want them to have ServiceNow. The corporate incident management system, they wanted notification and escalation tooling because they were still using manual call out and ring people and find the next person and ring them. And a tool like PagerDuty for its scheduling and escalation policies was exactly what they wanted. But they wanted zero impact to the existing established mature incident management processes, which meant we had to implement PagerDuty entirely as a complementary piece, right? Not as an incident management system. So their flow was monitoring system into an event management layer, into a command center, and then on to ServiceNow. And that was not to be changed. The major incident managers who sit above that command center structure, they we're looking for something that they could align to their service hierarchy. So all of those 700 odd services that we have that are associated by division and department, product family, down to product itself, they wanted to have a tool that could leverage comms and managing major incidents against that process. Major stakeholders wanted oversight, and compliance obviously wanted everything controlled in a common system. Now, in short, DevOps, all the monitoring tools going into PagerDuty. And we put in ServiceNow as kind of ServiceNow by stealth for them. They don't have to log in. They don't have to look at it. It just happens, okay? But that keeps care of the compliance. That keeps care of the visibility for management. So that was fine. And the OCC, which is our command center, operations command center, they had their existing tooling, and the only thing that happened was this PagerDuty sync with ServiceNow incidents. So that seemed all very well. But the more we looked at it, it was like, what do these two systems have in common? They have a dependency on the same incident system of record, ServiceNow. So a lot of other more in-depth questions started coming up on ticket data structure. So ITIL is very verbose in how it manages its incidents. There are lots and lots of fields and cause codes, and maybe they're nested trees of, you know, what was this? It was a network error with a firewall, with a change, and people have to fill out all these things. It's quite a verbose structure. And we had reports and stuff which were expecting that to be filled in. How would these sync across when we compare it to PagerDuty, where it's a very lightweight incident model? Ticket resolution. Doesn't matter where it happens for each workflow. Yes is the answer, because if we resolve something in PagerDuty that started in ITIL land, those fields are not filled in, okay? Everything has to still align to our corporate service hierarchy, which is stored in ServiceNow. And how do the major incident management processes and team get involved when something in DevOps land becomes a major problem for us? And what happens when an incident is reassigned from one flow to another? So we didn't have our entire user base in PagerDuty. We have 16,000 users. So we were onboarding users as and when they were needed into the product, which potentially meant that we had incidents which were in PagerDuty, and then we're getting assigned maybe to a sister team that wasn't, okay? All the time whilst PagerDuty was trying to keep in sync with ServiceNow. And the answer to all these questions was basically we had to customize, and quite heavily customize, our ServiceNow integration. And we did this with the help of enablement team at PagerDuty, and everything was fine. And we got it in, okay? But we had to plan this out in depth. And the planning, I'm not going to go through every row here, but we had to look at everything we could possibly think that would happen. What happens if somebody does something in the first column? What is the impact in the DevOps flow versus what's happening in the ITIL flow? Get that managed and approved by stakeholders across the board and agreed in advance. This was all before we could start developing the integrations. It took a lot of work. So the DevOps workflow was basically vanilla, right? The only difference, it was ServiceNow by stealth in the middle. They never needed to log into ServiceNow. And if something needed major incident management, then they had to mobilize and they had to contact the OCC. The OCC workflow was unchanged because they said they wanted zero change. The main thing on this is if something was raised in the OCC ITIL workflow, it had to be resolved there. And we would not allow somebody on their PagerDuty app clicking resolve for that to work. Okay. So we now have that solution in place. We also have to work out how service hierarchy came into that. So we imported in the service hierarchy. We mapped technical services against business services for the DevOps teams, but we couldn't do that for the non-DevOps teams because they weren't onboarded in PagerDuty. They were still in ITIL land. So that was managed by major incident management during outages. Stakeholders were then able to subscribe to dashboards. The major incident managers were getting great benefit out of having the ability at a click of a finger to bring in SWAT teams with diverse skills onto their major incidents. They could also trigger comms on their major incidents because they had manually linked those business services. All of our major incident management was now being done in PagerDuty, and if the incident occurred outside of it, then there was a manual stitching happening by the major incident managers. And they were using response plays to hook in CTOs or execs to incidents by using just right-clicking and doing a response play. We were getting major benefits from this, major benefits on MTTR especially. Here's an example of a dashboard on a good day for an example, which would have been a bad day for the business. We had an issue, a P2 issue with one of our data centers. We could see, or our stakeholders could see that, yes, it was affecting multiple products, let's say in the financial services division, but in the corporate division in the middle, it was only affecting some of those products. And in the top left, this is our top level dashboard if you're using the status feature in PagerDuty, but we also had lower level dashboards that were broken out by divisions. And people could subscribe at those levels. That's all well and good, but what didn't quite work? Syncing business services was difficult for us. They were constantly in flux, marketing, products moving between service families, keeping the hierarchy in sync was a manual task. So it became broadly representative rather than accurate quite quickly, which is a polite way of saying it got out of sync. Stakeholders wanted to be woken up. Our exec wanted to be woken up when stuff happened, not receive a text message or a push, which meant switching them from a stakeholder license to a full license. And upgrades to ServiceNow were getting complex because we weren't vanilla. We couldn't just run the upgrade and hit the button. We had to we had to check the dependencies on all of our updates. So looking at all of that is the last 3 years compressed very quickly. We have in our next steps, we have, there is a new feature which we have in development. We haven't rolled into production at time of recording yet, where our services will be synced across, and that's going to be awesome. There is a huge expansion of Agile and DevOps methodology across the company, which means we need to think about the next evolution of our converged model for incident management with the ITSM layer. I think that zero change to the ITIL model will change. And how to get a combined view of the whole estate, including the bits outside of PagerDuty governance. These are the bits we're thinking about at the moment. Also maintaining that DevOps agility of being agile and being autonomous. We need them to be able to create their own technical services. We need to think about the technical services in ServiceNow and whether they need to be hooked into our hierarchy there. And we need to think about governance as well, of how we maintain the quality of the system and how that's governed centrally. Okay, that's the end of my story for the last 3 years. If anyone has any questions, by all means reach out to me. I'm John Francis Kennedy on LinkedIn. Other than that, thank you very much for your time, and I hope it was beneficial to you.